Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we get to review my first book off my most anticipated list of 2024. Really excited about this. This book came out, I think January 30th, I think. But that is The House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden. I devoured this book. This was one of the books I was absolutely most excited about. His novel All Hallows was on my top 2023 reads. And he's just one of those authors that I discovered within the last 2 years and have determined I really enjoy his writing style. This is the fourth book that I have read from him. And I've just found every single one of them to be exceptionally enjoyable. I definitely have some critiques on this one, but overall, Christopher Golden is becoming one of those authors that if he writes something, I'm going to pick it up. He's also one of those authors that I feel like is writing about different kind of seasons with his work. The first book I ever read from him was Road of Bones, which is a very eerie, wintry setting. It's sort of semi-survival, isolation horror, also kind of this like road adventure. All Hallows is just this amazing love letter to Halloween, and this is very summery in tone and setting. This book takes us to a small town in Sicily at the very end of summer, beginning of fall. It is very summery. The setting is very beautiful. It's very atmospheric. This book gets a 10 out of 10 for settings because I've always wanted to go to Italy, but this book really made me feel like I was right there in this really small, old world town, and I absolutely loved the whole setting of the story. So let's read the inside real quick. Across Italy, there are many half-empty towns, nearly abandoned by those who migrated to the coast or to cities. The beautiful crumbling hilltop town of Bacchina is among them, but its mayor has taken drastic measures to rebuild, selling abandoned homes to anyone in the world for €1, as long as the buyer promises to live there for at least 5 years. It's a no-brainer for an American couple, Tommy and Kate Puglisi. Both work remotely, and Bacchina is the home of Tommy's grandparents, his closest living relatives. It feels like a romantic adventure, an opportunity the young couple would be crazy not to seize. But from the moment they move in, they both feel a shadow has fallen on them. Tommy's grandmother is furious, even a little frightened, when she realizes which house they've bought. There are rooms in an annex at the back of the house that they didn't know were there. The place makes strange noises at night. Locked doors are suddenly open. And when they go to a family gathering, there are certain people are whispering about them and about their house, which one neighbor refers to as the House of Last Resort. Soon they learn that the home was owned for generations by the church. But the real secret and the true dread is unlocked when they finally learn what the priests were doing in this house for all those long years, and how many people died in the strange chapel inside. While down in the catacombs beneath Bacchina, something stirs. So I went into this novel thinking that it was going to be more of like a traditional ghost story. While there are ghosts present in this story, they are very minimal and to an extent kind of useless. And this story is definitely much more than meets the eye. However, it's also not that scary. The first like third of this book is really just setting the tone and like kind of laying out the setting and what's going to eventually be the mystery of this house. But nothing of like the horror sort really happens until far deep into the novel, which I don't really mind if when you get to the terrifying parts, they are really terrifying. But it really took a lot to get there. That being said, I do think the setting is the strongest piece of this story. And I really did enjoy being in the small town, understanding how it worked, kind of hearing like how the locals operated, the people who have come to the town to kind of be part of this repopulation project operated, the association of the town with the church, how the house that they are in is related to the church. There was a lot of building, and I really did appreciate that. But I felt like it also spent so much time on creating the setting of this story that we saw less and less of our characters. Obviously there's characters very present throughout the whole thing, but they feel very one-dimensional. Not a single character experiences any kind of growth. They just are who they are from beginning to end. They're all very, very one-note characters. Our two leads, Tommy and Kate, are very much defined by their unconditional love and support for one another, and how that kind of gets tested throughout the story. But even the testing of their love for one another really is a very realistic kind of test that kind of just focuses on Kate's interactions with Tommy's parents, or his grandparents, so her relationship with her in-laws. A very common thing that you could see in like an average marital fight or dispute. The grandparents, again, kind of fit this kind of one note, almost like caricature of just doting, concerned grandparents. The cousin, who's basically a figurehead for an older brother, is very much just a caring older brother. The priest, who is kind of shrouded in mystery, is kind of this just like timid priest. There's just no growth with any of our characters, and when we do find out that there is a character who is more than they seem, a lot of questions open as to why, what was the motivation, who are they working with, where did they come from, why are they doing this, and just kind of hits you out of nowhere to be this kind of twist, except there's nothing gratifying about it because it comes out of nowhere. The connections and motivations are never explained, and it's left completely open-ended. And so I just had a hard time caring about any of our characters. I was more invested in the actual story and kind of trying to figure out what's going on in this town and with this house. And as somebody who has recently been to the catacombs of Paris, it is very, very, very pivotal to understand like kind of old world catacombs, especially the ones that do have like visible bodies still in them. And I thought that was very, very cool. I really did love the setting, and most of the horror does come from that particular angle of the setting. The imagery that takes place in the catacombs is scary. It's really well done. I don't know if I would say it's unique because it's something I have seen before, yet I just really liked how it all came together in this story. It was a very, very descriptive, unsettling set of images that was put before us. However, it was scary in the way that a Darcy Coates novel is scary, where there's this kind of cozy atmosphere the entire time, and then you get these moments of really disturbing imagery, but then it goes back to this kind of cozy atmosphere. So you kind of have this rolling sense of like being lulled back into safety while reading this novel. Again, it takes a very, very long time for anything scary to actually happen. And even as it's happening, the payoff is never quite worth the build-up to it. We have a couple scenes. There's a scene with Kate and Nono in the kitchen that's a real turning point for the story that really came out of nowhere, and I was really impressed by. And I did think it was very, very frightening, and it did set up a lot of where the plot was going. However, I don't think anything that followed afterwards led back up to how well crafted that scene was and the kind of strange turn that took. It was the twist in the story that kind of let everything else unravel, and I just wanted more like that. I also found some pretty glaring plot holes. Like at one point there's a character who sees some of the ghosts and like recognizes them in solidarity with another character, and then like 30 pages later all of a sudden can't see the ghosts and kind of acts as if they were never there. There's this whole thing where Kate is putting the safety of her husband before anybody else, which is understandable in her situation. However, the way in which she's doing it is so unbelievably selfish that her actions made me just truly dislike her, and have absolutely no sympathy for her as she's going through this absolutely horrific ordeal. Just her complete disregard for other humans and other people's loved ones, and even her own relatives, I thought was just absolutely deplorable. And so it was a novel that I had a really, really hard time loving. But again, the setting and kind of reading about the unraveling of everything still kept it at a 4-star read for me. I read this book in like 2.5 days, and I read the vast majority of it, like 200 out of the 290 pages in the last day. So I was really intrigued by it, and I really liked the writing style. I just felt like it needed to have another round of editing to go through it to really fine-tune some of the more glaring issues that this story had. I felt like I was left with a lot of unanswered questions too. We kind of get into this lore of, and I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to ruin like the twist, because I do think the twist is a really interesting take, and you don't quite get that from the premise. But this kind of evil gets unleashed at a certain point, and it's affecting seemingly a bunch of people. But that whole storyline kind of gets brushed aside to focus on the like final crescendo of the story. And I just wanted more from that because it was just such an interesting setup and such an interesting thing to add that didn't need to be added at all to add anything to the story, and it's just completely forgotten, you know? And you just see bad things happening to good Samaritans, and you're kind of like, wow, let's go back to that. I want to see what happened with those characters. And you just don't. And then the ending. I don't quite know how I feel about the ending. I'm happy it was bleak. I'm really happy it was bleak because it had an opportunity to be very, very positive at the end, and it kind of looks like it's going in that way, and all of a sudden it's not. And I did appreciate that because I kind of needed it to take on a heavier tone to kind of really stick the landing of what it was trying to do. I feel like if it had a happy ending, I kind of just would have been like, okay, whatever. This is like a Darcy Coates novel that's just not quite as cozy. So having such a kind of bleak ending, and it's also kind of this like false sense of security ending, I did enjoy. I did think it needed that. And I feel like a lot of Christopher Golden stuffs have some pretty bleak endings. All Hallows ending definitely crushed me a little bit. And I needed that book to have a happy ending because that book was just such a joy to read. But yeah, there's just so many unanswered questions that I have with this book. And yet I can't rate it. I can't call it a bad book because I did enjoy reading it. And it just took such a wild turn from what I was expecting that I was like, okay, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, Christopher Golden, and I appreciate the attempt. But it just wasn't fabulous. Absolutely wasn't fabulous. But the setting in the story, oh my God, the setting. It was just so good, and it was so beautiful. And you felt like you were in a coastal town in Italy. Like, I loved all of that. I just hated our characters. They were just so flat. There was nothing intriguing or interesting about any of them. There was no redemption arc. They just were one-note people. Nobody was even like a bad person. They were just okay people living their okay lives. And then these awful things start happening to them, and they try and navigate them and kind of slowly become less good people and more like secretive people. I don't know. I don't know. And there's definitely a very, 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 very heavy criticism of the Catholic Church in this story, which I am fine with reading criticism about religious hypocrisy. However, the angle that Christopher Golden chose to attack, I found strange. And this will be a slightly minor spoiler, and this video is almost done, so if you don't want spoilers for this, I would maybe stop the video here. But the fact that he chose to attack the concept of exorcists, when there are so many more hypocritical roles in the Catholic Church, I found really, really interesting. And I felt that he was trying to create this dialogue between the religious like paranoia of demons inhabiting somebody versus a misunderstanding of mental health. And that's a dialogue that I really do enjoy reading about in horror because I think it has a lot to say, and I think Paul Tremblay's Head Full of Ghosts probably hits it the best, hits it on the head. Just, I love that story. But with this, it didn't quite work for me because these priests were so old. This church is so old, or this house, this organization is so old that the general conceptions of mental health that we have today probably wouldn't have existed 100 years ago. And so attacking priests for trying to rid people of demons, I thought was just a strange angle to take when there's so many other fallacies in the corruption of the Catholic Church that Christopher Golden could have gone for. And even in the story, the priests all try to help. So it just kind of felt like he wasn't getting the point he was trying to make across, or I just completely missed it. So I wasn't quite sure, because I do understand that there was something there to be said. I just don't think he said what he was trying to say, and instead he just kind of criticized people that were, I think, trying to help people. So I don't know. Maybe I just read it wrong, and it's something that I'm misinterpreting, but I just found that a little strange. I found it a little strange. Is there like a long history of like exorcisms in the Catholic Church being disguised as something else? Like, I just don't know. Maybe there's a historical reference I'm completely missing, but I thought that they were really secretive about that whole thing anyway, and they didn't really discuss it, so I'm not quite sure what the dialogue Christopher Golden was trying to open up there, but it didn't quite make sense to me. Anyways, 4 stars. 4 stars. I still enjoyed this book. I have a lot of problems with this book, but the overall tone and setting and storyline, I still wanted to read. I wanted it to definitely be scarier, and the moments of scary we really, really got. But they were so short-lived. And yes, they were very, very disturbing images. Like, all of the rats inside of the corpses, I thought was really, really terrifying. It's definitely something I have seen. It reminded me a lot of Mr. Bobinski in Coraline, which is a very, very scary image anyhow. But like the other Mr. Bobinski, not like the regular Mr. Bobinski. And so I really did appreciate a lot of the imagery, but there wasn't enough. The first half of this book did not feel like a horror novel to me. It felt like a travel blog. And I still read it. I still read it very, very quickly because I was very engrossed in like the traveling aspect of it. But it was definitely more horror adjacent for the beginning, and then it didn't have enough horror in the end for what I wanted. But still very, very, very fun. If you're like going to Italy, or like you're going to be like sitting on a beach, this is a great beach read book. You'll get through it really, really quickly, but it's not really giving anything new. So that's that. Anyways, 4 stars, low 4 stars. It could have been a 3, but I did enjoy it, and I did appreciate the bleakness of the ending, and I really read it very, very quickly. So seemingly, I didn't want to put it down. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah!